Progress on the buyouts and some letters going backwards and forwards to Wellington about making things go even faster. And there is a presentation here. And for those people here waiting for item 10, don't give up. We're all trying to live long enough to get to it. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors. A relatively brief report from recovery this month, which, because of its brevity, I'm most definitely going to take as read. No decisions, so just for noting, please. Just draw two or three things out of the report that I'd like to kind of emphasise, and then Mace has got a teeny bit more detail on statistics and numbers and stuff. Appended to the report is a recent letter from Recovery Minister Mitchell for your information. We've written back now to that letter. One letter's gone back from the Mayor directly to the Minister, and Phil has sent a letter back in a bit more detail to the Cyclone Recovery Unit. Really, the letters and the conversation are about stuff that was happening anyway, and progress in conversations that were already underway between the Recovery Office here in Auckland and the Cyclone Recovery Unit. And specifically, that's about Category 2. We continue to discuss the implications for homeowners who may be many, many years in a Category 2 situation, while some of those Category 2 solutions are designed, consented, constructed, and so on, and a broad view amongst all those involved, central government, the Recovery Office, and I'm sure in this room that that's not the best situation to leave people in for many years whilst we implement some of these Category 2 solutions. So that's the crux of the conversation about how can we do that Category 2 stuff differently and considerably more quickly. On the conversation of acceleration, even since this report was written just a couple of weeks ago, the categorisation numbers have increased considerably. Phil talked to the numbers earlier on. The report in front of you talks to us being about a third of the way through categorisation. That's already long since been eclipsed. We're now more like a half of the way through categorisation. And in the month just gone, April, we've categorised about 400 homes. So now that we've got all the policy stuff behind us at the very tail end of last year and got solidly into categorisation, it's really beginning to accelerate. Was really delighted to visit Muriwai a couple of weeks ago and talk with the first of the deconstruction contractors that we've now engaged. They're actively involved with 7 homes in Muriwai. The cause of my delight was out of those 7 homes, 3 of them will be relocated, 3 of them will be actively deconstructed and the materials reused, and only 1 of them has to be sort of more traditionally demolished in the more traditional sense. And even then, the waste will be diverted from landfill to the tune of something like 70 or 80%. So really pleased with the deconstruction programs.
Oh, come on, it's not that bad. Elf's given up.
It's not my committee this time.
Yeah.
Who's got the lowest pain threshold?
Whatever it was I did then, I am sorry for whatever it was I did or said. Yeah, so really pleased with the deconstruction programme. The last point I wanted to make before Mace just jumps into a few numbers here is around disputes. As you can imagine, with hundreds and hundreds of homes now being categorised every month, there is an increasing number of homeowners who want to talk to us and to some degree dispute and understand and get more detail about some of the decisions that we've made. A theme in there is Category 1. Category 1 is an enormous broad category, and if I'm being honest, we could have done more to explain the broadness of Category 1 over the previous few months. It spans anything from no damage at all to a property or negligible little damage right the way up to close to intolerable risk to life, but not quite. So you can have some really significant property damage in category 1, but not intolerable risk to life. So it's that top end of that categorization where we're having an increasing number of conversations with homeowners about, well, surely this amount of damage is more significant than what category 1 allows for. Mace?
Kia ora, Matt, and kia ora members and your worship. I'll take the second half of this. So just to give you some ideas about that acceleration and to acknowledge working directly with communities, really positive collaboration and feedback from communities and challenging us to do better. As Matt said, the second row shows significant progress even since this report was written, with now over 1,200 properties being categorised. We're seeing that because we've got, as Matt said, the policies in place, but also a cadence with our specialist engineers and our systems being quite refined, and communities and homeowners understanding the process and being able to make those decisions quickly. So category 3 buyouts of valuation offers made, and now 185 offers are being made. 87 of those have been accepted as of the end of April, and we've settled on 55 homes and progressing that through the system into deconstruction, removal, or demolition in some circumstances where it's not safe to deconstruct. Disputes, Matt's mentioned those disputes. I just thought I'd mention forecasts as well. We have a strong forecast till the 30th of June. We will have the majority completed. 30th of September, another forecast where we will have a vast majority completed, and that's when the scheme closes. We expect that 3,000 people will have entered the scheme as an opt-in by the 30th of September. That's over 1,000 from this year alone. So we have got that ongoing wave of opting in, and many of those are category 1 homes that may be category 1 homes because of the impact on those homes. So where our communication is really critical. Oops. Just really not to spend too much time on this, but showing you the pattern across local boards, and we will send some more information out that shows you the grand total of the number of people who have opted in by local board area, which is currently at 2,715, and you all know where those real high intensity areas are, and they typically follow the Making Space for Water program. But the total opt-ins, people who are opting into the scheme, are important. Probably the other thing to mention, in some locations, we're also aware of where people should have opted in but haven't, and we have a campaign where there is what we've modelled as a likely intolerable risk to life to work with those communities, and some of those are in blue-green network or Making Space for Water locations. So that's a positive, proactive approach with our navigators to do that work. Our real focus is on risk mitigation projects, and as you see, not many 2C properties have identified, and we have been identified, and we are, next month you should see some of those come into this table as we get agreement on funding from the Crown. And of course, you're making your own decisions on the long-term plan funding as well. So we've identified over 190 2C properties that will start to populate this table, and a further 310 that would still potentially have active or habitable floor level flooding in those blue-green network areas that aren't intolerable risk to life, but will get real benefits from those projects. And a further, so taking you to 715 properties that would get active benefits from the blue-green Making Space for Water projects. Our real focus around the forecast, as I mentioned, is to provide people with certainty for the future. And lastly, just a bit of a plug. Tonight we have webinar. It's the fourth in a series of webinar that we're running. And this one's on insurance, so really critical for homeowners. We've had to date in the order of 500 people register for the webinar this evening. And we've got panel participants, as it says, from the Insurance Council, New Zealand Claims Resolution Service, EQC, and our own Tamaki Makaurau Recovery Office. That will really allow questions, so there's some questions already come in, and we'll be answering those questions, but providing, I hope, valuable information to people to assist them with getting their home back into their homes. The last thing that isn't there is we have had some additional funding from the Cyclone Recovery Unit and from the Minister, which we've added to this council's investment in storm response funding, and we've got a storm response readiness program campaign for the winter, commencing in May. So really appreciate that support. And that'll include an information campaign of what you can do around your own property, particularly where you're at risk of flooding. A community-led program around streams, and enhanced or adding to our operational removal of large debris in streams. As we know, debris and caused quite a lot of the flooding where that blocked our stormwater network system. So we're having a real focus on that. And lastly, just to thank many of you for supporting the Recovery Office and working with the community. We appreciate that support. Thank you, Your Worship.
Very good, thank you, Mace and Matt. Deputy Mayor Simpson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to move the report too. Look, thank you both for the work that you're doing. It's complex and it's detailed and it's time consuming. The question I want to ask you for public record though is how are we going compared to other parts of the country that are facing the same types of issues that we are? Because when I'm often asked from the media that they sort of say it's taking an awful long time. So I just want to be able to put something out there that sort of says, yes, it is complex, yes, it takes time, but how do you think we rank compared to other people who are going through the same type of issues as we do?
Thanks for the question. I'm really hesitant to benchmark ourselves against other parts of the country. The situations being faced by Auckland in this kind of urban environment, really dense urban environment, versus some of the situations in particularly the Hawke's Bay, which are quite different, have a considerable effect on how things are categorised and how long things take. Having said that, if you're quite sort of crude about the comparison in terms of a key element, which would be the purchasing and removing Category 3 homes, Auckland compares favourably with both the Hawke's Bay and Gisborne in terms of how long it took to get through all the policy stuff and then actually get to a point where homes were being purchased and being removed and people got out of harm's way. I suppose now, given the opportunity, what I would also say to you is we've done some sort of gentle benchmarking against Australia in particular, and Auckland and the other regions of New Zealand actually compare relatively favourably in terms of how long it's taken us to get to that really key point, as compared with New South Wales and Queensland. Having said all of that, that's cold comfort to anybody who's still in a position that we haven't yet categorised them, so it's not a thing that we talk about too often.
I get that. The point I was just trying to help you with is that, you know, we're quite often told it takes too long, and yet actually we're doing very well compared to other places in Australasia to get through to this point. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Turner, please.
Thank you very much. And, you know, taking into account the things that were just said, but those 3,000 houses that you expect are all actually 3,000 individuals. And there's a big gap between 3,000 and the figures up on that chart there. And we're 15 months on, And yes, I've had some people on my special list that have been, actually, a couple of them actually been paid out, so thank you very much. But there's the majority that are still tearing their hair out in the absolute unknown. And I don't know what you can do about that, but I certainly have to, I must have had 3 of them that I've got onto your navigators, but to go for some sort of, support, because they're in a real state of affairs. One of them there now who's been categorised, but now can't even talk about his concerns until a dollar value's been put to it and being told, well, we're not sure when that's going to be. So I'd like to ask kind of where you just see that stuff coming. How far out before, like you're bringing new people in, but we've still got the old people kind of in a tsunami. So that's my first question.
Thanks, Councillor. We've just in the last few days communicated with everybody that opted in 2023 specifically, and are prioritising the people that opted in last year as opposed to the people that have opted in more recently. So that would be one of the key things that we're doing right now in terms of who's already in the scheme.
Thank you, and that actually highlights my point. And I won't reiterate it, but when I sat here and we had a discussion last time, I gave you an example of someone who'd been challenged for have you filled out the forms. I think it was about 6 times. That particular person, who I've had Caroline and others really working with strongly, which is appreciated, but has now been told, you're not in the list yet because you didn't fill out your form until December 23, when actually he filled out the first form in August. So, and that just, you know what it does. So that's just a few. So last question, please. You did just make the comment about blue-green, the advantages of that, and you said that people who aren't getting brought out but would benefit from the blue-green. But the blue-green isn't just a case of taking houses away and saying to the water, have your way. There's a bunch of engineering got to go into this too. How far away is that?
Thank you, Councillor Turner. So the first, Healthy Waters are working on those programs. There's 3 projects that are going to the Crown Infrastructure Partners for approval this week, and then the other 8, based around the Minister's letter for Go Faster, will be fast following. We are looking at how we can deliver those first 3 projects within the next 2 years really quickly, and how we can do some pre-works where we can to provide relief that before that full infrastructure program comes into place. But the design work and the feasibility is well down the track.
Thank you. And could I say the pre-work's real important? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Foley, please.
Kia ora, thank you, and thanks guys for that presentation. Thanks also Mace and the team who came out to Mangere Bridge, and it was a really good turnout from our community that night. I just wanted to ask, on slide 3, where you've got categorisation by local board area, when you look at that, and I know that when people in my community are going to look at that tonight, they're going to say, that's a really low number from Mangere. So can you just explain why that number is so low? Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Foley. For Mangere, there are actually 112 people have opted into the project, so it does, what reflected here is those who have been categorised, and we will provide you those total numbers that have opted into the process. We're also aware in some areas, and Mangere is one, where over 90 other homes are potentially adversely affected and potentially should opt in. If those homes are in a 2C area, a blue-green network area, they will benefit anyway, so it's a moot point. But that's the campaign around getting people to opt in where it's necessary. We are able to identify those homes that should opt in to the program, and where there's 2Cs, we will include that. So, yeah, certainly Mangere, Otahu, 112 people have opted into that project, and not always reflected here. But
Councillor, if I could just add, there's a really high concentration of Kaingaora homes there as well. Our highest concentration, in fact, and they're doing a considerable amount in parallel with our efforts, and their numbers are not demonstrated here.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank
Sorry, I should have mentioned that. Kaingaora have had 406 homes across the region adversely impacted, and they're not included in that, but we are working collaboratively with Kaingaora in terms of the benefit of communities.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Councillor Ferry, please.
Kia ora, and thank you for the work, and I really appreciate how staff in the Recovery Office have been open to regular catch-ups with me about what's happening in my ward, and sharing information, and really proactive in the conversations with community members too, so thank you for that. My question is primarily around this slide, so that's really great that it's still up, and that is the very low number so far in 2C. And acknowledging, the letters that we have on the agenda today, the conversation we're having with central government, I wondered if you might want to, within the parameters, obviously there's some confidentiality applying here, explain that a little bit, because I think early in the process we thought there'd be a lot of 2Cs. Now, while the numbers are starting to spit out and we're seeing a lot of 1s, and so maybe understanding, and you mentioned before that perhaps we hadn't sort of front-footed what a 1 was enough, but perhaps if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit to why we're not seeing a lot of 2Cs yet, and whether you think that will be something that comes further down the process. And then I have one other brief question. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ferry. The reason why you're not seeing 2Cs, as many 2Cs, is needing the feasibility and approval for funding, so we can give people certainty. But in terms of directly 2Cs, we have identified approximately 190 properties in that category, and then a further 630, 40 properties that will receive benefit in those 2C areas. So you will see those numbers come up as soon as we get that feasibility. We could have provided people with a 2A category, which is further investigation.
Yeah.
Our judgment was that wouldn't provide the certainty that people are looking for, or any more certainty than not having a category at all. So I appreciate that. We have been in our webinars and community groups, community meetings, really emphasising where 2C projects will be. But yeah, thank you for acknowledging the letters. That's an active conversation, so I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. And the other thing was, Matt, you mentioned the communications to everyone who came in 2023. My understanding is that there's going to be messages out to pretty much everyone very soon about when they can expect some confirmation on their categorisation. I sort of don't want to put the cart before the horse, because I know we've had a number of times where we've thought we could meet a deadline and then not quite been able to meet it. The complexity of this task, I think, has been massive, and is probably more fairly compared to the Christchurch earthquake recovery than perhaps our friends in Hawke's Bay, who are dealing with quite a different scenario from ours. So I wondered if you wanted to comment a little bit on, there was a commitment to get categorisations to people by the end of March that wasn't able to be met. Where are we up to with that?
Thanks, Councillor. So if you just use the figures that we've talked about today, we are now getting through around about 400 categorisations a month. We're at around 1,300. We expect 2,600, 2,700, maybe up to 3,000 categorisations in total. If you divide that difference by 400 a month, we will be mid-year, which is what we've been signalling most recently as where we think we'll get to with this. There'll be a tail to this beyond September. People have got until September to opt into the scheme, so there are going to be some categorisations beyond September, but you're talking about very small numbers. The bulk of this work we expect still to be done by mid-year.
quick supplementary then. Is there any prioritisation being done within those cases, acknowledging that, you know, in some cases it's just the complexity of the land, but we do have some cases where, for example, people have been out of their home for a long time, they might have small children who need to attend a local school, people who have health needs, it's difficult for them to find accessible housing alternatives. Those are just a couple of small examples. What are we doing in terms of trying to prioritise the people who are particularly vulnerable in this situation?
Thank you. Aside from, having now identified quite clearly everybody that opted in 2023 and prioritising our efforts there, prioritising also those that we know are displaced as another tranche of people that we prioritise. What we do on a more granular level is once a week, Mace and I meet with our community team who elevate to us cases of particular concern, so cases of psychological, financial, and so on type of impacts that have come through from the navigation team in the communities. And we have a very specific prioritisation process for individual cases, which we go through weekly.
Great, thank you.
Alf, are you out there, Councillor Filipina?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor. Tēnā kōrua, gentlemen. Look, Councillor Foley and Councillor Ferry have asked two of my questions. I've got two very quick ones. In regards to homes that we believe are Category 3 and haven't been assessed, what escalation process is available? That's the first part, right?
Thank you, Councillor Filipina. The escalation process really is what Matt has talked about. So through our navigation service, and they're supporting 1,200 families, households at the moment, is actually escalating those issues where there's people most in need, either by being displaced or most at risk. So we do that weekly and get recommendations about how we do that. Yeah,
the supplementary to that, Mace, is those that still need to be categorised and assessed.
Yes, so thanks, Councillor Filipino. Where we're able to use our flood models, for example, and identify where there is intolerable risk to life based on the modelling, we've had priority locations centred around what we believe will be Category 3. So we're taking that prioritised approach, both from a community impact point of view for social and community impact, but also where homes, allowing people to move on from that intolerable risk to life, the objective around the scheme. So two lenses on that issue. Kia ora.
Okay, last part Mr. Mayor, and that is, has there been any thought of the navigational teams across Tamaki Makaurau and the local board areas going out door to door in the areas you've just identified, Mace? For example, to make sure.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, that's happening as we speak, and in your ward, in fact, because there are homeowners who haven't opted in, and there are working alongside Kāinga Ora, for example, in that location. We're doing that directly, and that's occurring across other wards and local board areas as well.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Councillor Filipina. Councillor Hills, please.
Thank you. Are we allowed to discuss the content of the letter about the 2Cs, or is that not? I can't understand if that's on our agenda or that's will be public.
It's
okay.
Sorry, you mean the letter that came from the Minister,
no,
or what we've said back?
Yeah.
No, when it's able to be released, we'll release it.
Okay. Well, I'll try and keep it high level. I guess, in the discussions in the political advisory group, I have concerns about, I do want, obviously, people to be rushed forward as possible, but I do have concerns that we don't get future money for blue-green networks, say. Is it my understanding that our constant push will be to ensure that we can do both, just to give certainty to residents earlier, but we're not going to end up with large tracts of abandoned land that we can't do anything with. That's the aim.
That's the intent, quite clearly, Councillor Hills. So where we can deliver a blue-green network within the 2 years that Minister Mitchell has urged us to do and move quickly, that will occur. In other locations where infrastructure needs, there's an infrastructure deficit or an infrastructure failure that's causing flooding, we're putting that into business cases for central government to consider and co-fund with the funding in alignment with the funding agreement.
And can you allay my fears that I've said to you privately? We don't yet believe this is any attempt to cut the budget or reduce funding from government. We don't believe that that's the case.
We've had assurances there's no intent to cut any of the money from the National Resilience Plan funding of $6 billion or the agreement that Auckland Council has with central government on this.
Thank you. And very last question, and because they're all so different, have we yet got some case law or some perfect answers to slips on council land that affect private land? Because we're still getting tons of those requests, but we know sadly it's usually not a great outcome for the person. But have we got a line in the sand on that, or is it still case by case and largely around public assets? Because I know we've had 10,000 slips, so I can't imagine we can fix it all, but
it is case by case, but there's a good program in place, particularly with parks and community facilities and Auckland Transport, where there's public land, and supporting homeowners and landowners through that process. So I'm confident that those are being worked through in a proactive and reasonable way for people. In some cases, Auckland Transport's able to deliver direct responses, but not always, and the same goes for parks and community facilities.
Thank
you. Okay, Councillor Sayers, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My question is probably a question of clarification or inquiry. With category 2C properties that might have been, are going to take a few years for those people living in those homes to feel safe. Is there any growing pressure on you to change those categorizations to category 3, therefore triggering the buyout? Are you getting pressure from people just feeling that they're unsafe, are having to wait too long, and are now wanting to push into category 3 somehow?
Thanks, Councillor. I wouldn't say we were having pressure particularly from homeowners to do that, but it's something we're conscious of and have been conscious of for quite some time now, that it's not really a situation that we want to leave people in for years and years on end in a 2C home for 5, 7 or 9 years whilst the 2C solution is designed, implemented and so on and so forth. We know how long these things can take. So we've been proactively trying to figure out a different approach for these long-term 2Cs for quite some months now, and that's the crux of the conversation with central government. So
well, thank you for that. I guess I'm assuming that once you get some more clarification, that will be communicated out to those 2C people when both make inquiries along those lines.
of course.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, that brings that to a close, and thank you very much for the presentation and the work you've been doing on this for some months under pressure, and for handling the recent pressure from the Minister to speed things up, which is all good. We've got a...
You need a second, please.
No, I propose this, and the Deputy Mayor seconded that we note the progress on the Timothy Makaurau recovery efforts. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, carried. Thank you very much. This brings us with great excitement to the Ōrākei Local Board and item 10. And before they do, we